All right, folks, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop. Got to check my date here this Tuesday, May 14th. Great to have all of our students and members alike inside our live trading room. Let me get the webcam up for all of them here. Got Larry, Brad, Grant, Sam, Henry. Got Susie, Laureen, Dave, Alex, Charles, Phil, Brad, Barbara, Bell. The Killer Bees in tandem again. Let's get the webcam up. There we go. Should be good to go across the board. Still got a couple mangled fingers at least. But great to have all of us here otherwise. I hope everyone's doing extremely well. I really hope so, because not just today, but obviously yesterday, you know what's going on here in the stock market. Everything with the GameStop, AMC, that Reddit short squeeze, right? Let me ask, who here in our trading room, who here on social media, if you want to participate, please do. Who here was a trader actually following the markets, day trading, stock trading back 3 years ago when GameStop and AMC made their first pump? Anyone here in the cyber group room back then? Alex, I know Grant was, Bill, Scott, Laureen, Lee, Wayne, Andreas, C, he says. There we go. Leonard says he wishes. Well, I'll tell you what, I like that. I like Leonard's answer there. He says he sees, or he says, I wish. I mean, it's to say that, yeah, of course you wish that you were a trader back then, but here right now, right? So I know that Leonard did pretty well earlier today and yesterday. I know a bunch of us did very well yesterday too. Luis, Carlos, Danny, Brian as well, Jeff. There we go. So if you were not a trader back then with us, well, hey, this is pretty stunning then to see, at least, right? GameStop going today from 45 up to near 80. Then obviously, if you were in Traders Talk just last week, you know that we were following this trade back then, calling it out just over a week ago. So yeah, I mean, we were doing really well on it back then, but again, this is not our first rodeo with GameStop. We ended up pumping this up back then in 2020, early 21, essentially went from like $4 or $5 to a high of like 120. I was not expecting GameStop to make as clean of a pop as it made just this morning. Basically what happened, to give you the little scoop, the heads up for anyone not in the know, not in on the social media stuff as much. I get it. The main proprietor of the short squeeze back in 2021, this guy, his username on Reddit is Roaring Kitty. Take it as you will. Guy ended up doing so much research on GameStop and brick and mortar going into the pandemic and afterwards, like just a lot of interesting posts on the Reddit channel there about short covering and just a huge gamma short squeeze ahead. I guess he was right. Right. I mean, this thing ended up just blowing the roof off the place back at the end of 2020, 2021 early. And, you know, he was right. It led to a crazy pop, but obviously it led to a crazy drop, pulled right back down. AMC did the same thing. I don't think they're listed right now. Maybe they are. Express Clothing. They were publicly listed back then. I guess no longer. Bed Bath Beyond, no longer. BlackBerry back then. That was a nice pop and drop for us back then too. KOSS, K-O-S-S. I don't know what this company does, but that's another pop and drop that we had back then, right? Well, 2 days ago, this guy, Roaring Kitty, the main proprietor of the short squeeze back then, posted on Twitter for the first time since that squeeze. That's all that happened. That's all that happened, folks. Goes to show the power of social media, but also goes to show the power that, hey, history can repeat itself. So once this guy made some post, some meme on social media 2 days ago, I knew right away. I saw it pretty quickly, like 10 minutes in. I texted Rich, my colleague, and I was like, man, this is going to be a crazy day tomorrow. And of course it was, that being yesterday. We smashed it out the park on AMC, GameStop, Novavax. But man, what about today? I mean, all these trades still pushing up even here. GameStop obviously pumped up to $80. So how do you trade these stocks? How do you feel confident with entering, right? That's basically what we're going to cover here in this workshop. Now, though, really quickly to begin, just for all of our students here in chat, I had sent over a poll question to you earlier. I want to just get the results right now, show you here really quick. What stock do you want to go over the most from today's trading? Not yesterday, but today. And the reason I mention that is because I kind of assume most of us would be saying GameStop, AMC. So, we'll talk about the GameStop pump, but actually what we'll do first is go into AMC, the cheaper of the two, the more liquid of the two by infinite amounts. This has a tight spread. This has iceberg orders at a bunch of different price levels here. So this is a lot more tradable going into the week from yesterday in the morning. So this is just about the time. Let me quickly get my timestamps out really quick. It pays to be a member inside our live trading room. And I say that, I mean, hey, not just to those in there right now, but those on social media. Give me a brief moment here. I want to pull something up because from yesterday's chat, we were hammering this home. AMC ended up making basically the perfect bounce that we were looking for it to make. It ran up in pre-market here early on. Market opened up, it dropped off a little bit, but then it made a new bounce later on into the morning, the afternoon. It looks really good, but the question is how and why, and most importantly, why do we feel confident where we're focused around it? So, at 9:29 in the morning before the market opened up, I was writing this out to you, basically saying, AMC, I'd love to see support at 316 to 320. It may not happen though. This thing was actually pushing up really well going into the open. So 316 to 320 was very far away from where it was trading. That was the sole reason where I said, it may not happen, it may not get that low. But that was at 9:29 in the morning. Okay, question is why? Why was I focused on that price, that area, 316 to 320 as support? Well, let me ask really quickly, Grant, Brian, Luis, Carlos, Danny, Jeff, all of us here in chat. I'm going to give you the greatest hits as we do every week here in Traders Talk. The same questions, the same catchphrases each and every week, because it's all the same, underlying philosophies that I use on a trade like this. When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs from resistance, we'd like to think that initially resistance should become what? What do we got, folks? All of us, every single human here in this chat answering support, like just a machine gun of names just coming up here, support. Love it. Okay, so that would then beg the question, well, where do we have resistance? Let's take a look, because I think that you could see here pretty quickly, pre-market chart, like 4 in the morning, 7 in the morning here, right off of 316, and broke above it, moved up a little bit. But this is where we'll go further. We'll go further into like what the actual order book looked like from yesterday. Hopefully my book map doesn't freeze on me here. Got so much data I'm running here over last 48 hours. All right, give me a split moment here, folks. Just 1 second, 1 second. All right, so we're going to actually focus on that area, obviously, as I said, and that 4 a.m. top. But let's actually focus more around 7 o'clock in the morning. This is 7 a.m. Eastern time, yesterday morning. So, of course, it pumped up well. But, hey, we had some support at 282. We had some support at 290, some support at 295. That's all support. Well, here at 7 o'clock in the morning, we had resistance where? At 315. We had resistance where? 320. So that's where I'm expressing to you, for you in the pre-market, to say, well, where are my big levels? Where do I see these dark orange lines on the heat map? Where do I see big volume on the other columns on the heat map otherwise? Well, to see it break off of that as resistance and it cleanly runs, we are looking for support from there. So that's where I was saying to you before the open, to look for support around that 316 to 320. Now, the question is it going to make that proverbial big move shortly after? Do we get what we want? Or is this just going to hit 316 to 320 and then coil up and then just tank again, make a lower low over time, right? So, of course, that was in question after I had taken this entry, but, hopefully it shows here as it did yesterday. Yeah, it'll show right there. 318. There we go. And that was my entry right there. So, led to the bottom. Easy to say, it made for a nice bounce, but that's where today was a lot tougher to trade, because cat's out of the bag. You know that every stock under the sun is being put under a microscope now. You got the Wall Street bets people out there. That's where GameStop was way more difficult to trade today. That's where AMC was way more difficult to trade today. But it's also for the sake of saying that as traders, Rod, Grant, Jeff, Laureen, Susie, Dave, Locksme, all of our students here in chat, you could only focus on so much at one time with your two eyeballs. There's only so much that we could do, folks. There's only so much that we could focus on in one sitting. And that's where I'll tell you, you don't need 4, 6, or 8 different monitors to be a good trader. I have traders that have 4, 6, 8 monitors, and they suck. I'm just being honest with you. Tell you the truth, I have 3 monitors that I work off of. So you don't need that much. But point is that on a much more volatile day like today, at least, not as much yesterday. This was a much more difficult day because there was just that much more to go around. And myself, as a human being, I was getting overloaded with all these different trades popping up. And, I'm calling out of stock, then Fausto's calling out of stock, and I want to try and follow both. And then there's another one breaking out that Rich is calling. So, yeah, today was a little tough. Yesterday, though, that's where it was a lot easier for me to buckle in on this setup, saying, okay, GameStop might be moving too, but GameStop's a lot more volatile. I'd rather focus on something A, cheaper, B, less volatile. And this was just volatile enough. Trust me, this was a perfect trade to work off of because you saw how well it ran in pre-market here. Even if it can make half of that move off the bounce, that's a pretty solid run for me. That's enough money to make my day's pay. So every trade begins with the entry, and every entry that we take should be dictated off of a big level, Now, this is where we'll keep going with our levels here, right? Because we're calling these levels out to our students in chat throughout the day. This obviously pushed up pretty nicely. If you've been a member here in Traders Talk, even just from last week, well, you know that we're more focused around the 50-cent levels and the whole number levels. So, hey, $4 would be a pretty strong resistance to work off of, you'd assume. Whole number level, typically at whole numbers, we have big icebergs. So no surprise, because actually, look at this. It touched 4, pulled back. We had a big spike of volume, so probably had an iceberg getting filled there. Then it broke higher, right? Easy to say it ran up higher later on. But this is where I'll tell you, at least, it's not just even the book map level 4 that helps us focus for entries and exits, but it's also going back historically. Looking at this AMC chart that we had, looks like right around here, back from the end of March and even like end of January, it kind of bottomed out, loosely speaking, around this line at 405, but then even a lot better here, 405, 405, 405, the low, and then it gapped down, right, and dropped. So when a stock breaks below support, folks, and it tanks from support, we'd like to think that support should initially become what? Resistance. And then from there, it popped and broke above resistance. This is like right around 12 o'clock, right? You see that there? I think it was like 12 o'clock at the time. All right, so I was watching this with one of our traders, Glenda, on a coaching call, and that was at 12:26. I wrote to you there a little bit afterwards, but I was saying at 12:26, Glenda and I are looking for S support on AMC around 405 right now. Well, that was a little bit after it broke resistance and it ran off of it, right? It broke resistance and it ran off of it. Well, I'd like to think that when a stock breaks resistance and it runs from it, that initially the first test is the best test to see support hold. So thankfully, it's easy to say the cookie crumbled well on this trade. It held a higher low, moved back up. It's very possible that this could have been the end of the road here, and it could have crapped out, lower low, and maybe later on bounced. Maybe today could have bounced better. It's easy to say this held here, but every trade begins with the entry, and every entry is based off of a big level. So if this were to have broken lower, I would have went break even. It would have been, okay, that's it. Like, all right, out at 405, in and out, same price. That's fine. But ended up holding, continue to push up. We keep it going. We keep it going here, folks. Let's see. What else did we get here? I think that may have been in on my AMC call outs otherwise. No. I think we got one more here coming up. So the more it pushes up, obviously, we're looking for our next level ahead. At 11:52, 12 o'clock, right around $5, $5.10. That's your next historical level, so to say there. I have a bunch of lines that I'll probably just delete here and here and here. All right, so this next level, right around 5, maybe a little over $5 right there, is a pretty strong top back from beginning of February. So I thought right around 12 o'clock was a pretty good time to take the money and run, at least at that stage. And that was right off of kind of 4:30-ish maybe as it was beginning to pull back. But then over time, it did push up. It made a move up towards 5:05. This was later into the day, like 2:30 in the afternoon, 3 o'clock. did a decent job. It shook around it at first. It could have pulled back. It thankfully held at this point, moved up. But look what became support on the next touch. It held a higher low right from that same exact price, 5,505, that historical level next up. And then that was more heading into the close. So, unfortunately, it topped off at like 580-ish. It slammed back down. You knew off of this shake here that pretty much that this was game over for the afternoon. And if not this red bar, then it was this red bar afterwards, because there's only so much time left before the close. Maybe it could run up the next day. Obviously it did. But just to say, as far as a day trade, at least getting out before the market closes, to be in this trade from 405, let alone 318, the bottom that we had called out, this one shake maybe you hold on to and thinking it can go back up. But once it starts to pull back more, that's pretty much it. Just wrap it up. And hey, on the flip side of that, for all of my students here that like looking at shiny objects in the room, yeah, we know that AMC pumped up back in 2021, but we know it dumped right back down. And not only just in this sequence here, but it's not like it was just day over day over day over day over day over day, green bars nonstop. No. This thing ended up getting crushed and it made a higher low and it bounced back up again. But this was a roller coaster. Look at this thing. This is like the first pump that it had back at the end of January. So imagine getting on this thing at it wasn't $100 back then. I think AMC did a reverse split. But imagine getting in around these areas here and then having it fall, flatten out for months on end. That's not what we teach. That's not what we want you to do. That's not what we do. It's not like you hear Fausto ripping his hair out oh, damn, I held on to this stupid trade. Yeah, as a day trade, maybe. But as a swing trade, it's the last thing that we want to turn into a swing trade. For anyone that rolled the dice into this morning, I root you on. I'm wishing you well. But I feel that most of us know these stocks are going to come back down. Big trees fall hard. So that will take me into today's trading. But I wanted to go over that at least to begin. A little water break there too. So with that in mind, let's hop over now to AMC as far as the morning today, and how we could have prepped up our levels going into the open for AMC today. Truth be told, I did not trade AMC today at all. I wanted to, but this just fell off like a rock as soon as the market opened up. And this could be easy to say. I reckon I did hold my next support line here, but there was no entry even at that point. This was way too dangerous to trade, not even volatile. There's a difference between volatile and just outright dangerous. So this was very dangerous to be trying to look for that bounce, especially with it getting halted a couple of times on the way down. I guess it did hold my support line and bounced a little bit, but right now, lower highs, lower lows, it seems like this is bound to make. And if this fails to make a lower low, then maybe heading into the afternoon, it can make a better push back up. But, it's got to prove itself to me there. I have no interest on AMC right now, just for the direction that we're seeing. There we go, Susie. Very nice. Appreciate your comments, Susie, in the chat saying AMC halted 8 times today, not just once or twice, like I said. Yeah, you could better see that actually on level 4. This is the heat map today on AMC. Look how much of a mess this thing is. All these dashes in between the orange lines actually represent the halts. So, if you wanted to follow this trade going into the open, that's one thing. This was moving upward. It was breaking higher highs, or it looked like it wanted to right before the open. Well, we had resistance at $10. Again, you'd figure $10 is a decade level, round number, right? So with that in mind, it should be an assumed resistance. Well, we have about 143,000 shares out there on the ask, and this is well before even 7 a.m. Eastern time. So where your resistance is here. And then even just above that, actually, this is more of an anomaly, but right at $10.09, $10.09. You normally wouldn't think of that to be a level, but you have over 200,000 shares sitting there. So 143 plus 200, it's 343 plus thousand shares out there. And this is all before the crack of dawn, basically, really when pre-market begins to open up. Now, hey, AMC mashed right above these resistance lines right here at $10 and at $10.09. It flew right from there. So, hey, if this decides to pull back to $10, I would assume that the first test of that price would be support. It broke above these resistance lines as well as this as well. You could say this here too. But that's where at least perhaps this could be a strong support level going into the market open afterwards, perhaps. Now here we are. We're getting down to 8 o'clock in the morning right now. Pre-market opens up pretty much for every broker here at this stage. Let me ask this really quick. More of my greatest hits, but I want to make sure that we're on the same page. And, more so to my returning students, but really if you're a gold student, Elmer, Susie, I know Patrick, obviously, but, any of our newly enrolled students, feel more than free to participate on this. If I'm going to buy a stock, if I want to go long, buy a stock, my best entries to buy a stock are directly after what? It is directly after what? There we go. Elmer, I love Elmer's answer. Big level. Susie crossing a big level, adding on top right there. Wayne, same thing. Now, this is where we'll say, though, right? The last part of this catchphrase for this is by far the most important part. And I know that we all know the last part because it's like the most common sense part of it that we feel like we don't even need to include it. When it breaks through a big level on the way up. If this wants to bounce, what this needs to do, it's a necessity. It's not just a want, folks. If you want to follow protocol and rules and strategy, just like Fausto and I do, you got to follow all of them. So here, this is where I say, I can't just place a buy order out there, just praying and hoping and expecting for support to hold. You want to see it break under this level. You do. Break under the level, but really just after a few pennies, maybe 10 cents, nip right back above that thing and run right afterwards. So there's a fine difference between looking for a bounce that way and just outright catching a falling knife, right? So this is where I say, unless you let me know otherwise, I didn't receive any emails on this. I pray I don't actually, but my assumption is no one did this in pre-market here this morning in our trading room. Dave, Sam, Jeffrey, Patrick, I don't think anyone did this. Can you imagine the amount of people in pre-market this morning that got their asses absolutely handed to them trying to buy at $10 here? I can't even imagine. Have Schwab, Robinhood, TradeStation, Interactive Brokers. They probably had their phones off the hooks just from people getting their accounts ripped apart, just assuming that support's going to hold there. Oh, it's going to be okay. It's fine. So, yes, it did push up a little bit after, but as far as taking an intelligible trade, as far as trying to use strategy here, did it happen at 9? Did it make my famed under and over at $9? Nope. It touched it. It just touched it perfectly. So, hey, I was more focused on 10 anyway, but even this I wouldn't be taking. It's pre-market to begin with. If it were to have went under over, I likely would be interested in that entry. But more so here, notice what happens. It comes back up to 10. Once a stock breaks under support and not just a little nip, we're talking like a dollar break of that level. Support should initially become resistance. No surprise, it does. But yes, there is a day trade entry. There is an entry on this a little bit later on here off of 10, right here. So in terms of using strategy, in terms of looking for that move, it still doesn't get you that far because I'm sure to the naked eye and to, focusing in on the shiny object in the room, as I keep saying, you want more. I know you do because we're all focused on making money, right? Oh, look at this sell order out here at $15. What if it can move up there? Okay, well, we have a couple of sellers here at $12.50, at $12. You know what? Maybe if it goes up there, I'll just hit sell. That's it. Okay, right? It seemed like there was room for at least that. Well, when the foot's being taken off the gas pedal on this trade and it only goes up to 11, not up to 12.50, not up to 15, that's where you as a trader have to say, well, what happens when the foot's being taken off the gas pedal here? Because it came back down, it was chipping around this area, and it just became not worth your time to try and hold on to. It ended up trying to make one more push, I guess, but that's where I'd say as a trader, there's better trades to focus on going into the open. And normally, aside from that, you want to make sure that you're prepped up. If there's other stocks out there that have better levels or making as good of a push, I'd rather just kind of keep my time clean and make sure that I use that time to set up my levels for the next 4 to 6 hours ahead of my day, for the market open session at least. So there was a nice trade here. It took a little while. I guess you could have done better on it, but same result happened. This thing was a disaster after. Ended up pulling back under 10, and then from there just held up. Basically, watch this. Taking the heat map off, just look at the VWAP price. Look at how clean the VWAP became resistance once it broke under it as support. False breakout here, that's expected. Right? Level test right there. So it goes to show that a lot of these trades are going to wash out over time. They're not going to be worth it because they're just going to keep falling, or they'll just fall flat like they're doing right now. For anyone that's like, buying and just going to work and hoping it goes up another 20%, I'm wishing them the best. I don't think that's anyone here in our trading room. I'm mentioning more of the uneducated traders out there, not a part of Cyber Trading University. But, those traders are the ones that are really going to suffer, because obviously it's possible it can go up a little bit more, but I don't like being on the top of a roller coaster. I don't like being on any roller coaster. I got fear of roller coasters. So imagine being on the top of this roller coaster looking down. I'm not trying to have that happen here. All right. So AMC, we went over basically, gave you the screenshots on that for the most part. I want to give a quick shout out. I have a screenshot here really quickly. Brad. So I had like a monster trade on GameStop. Got out yesterday. Took like an 8-point profit. I know Belle did really well on her trade today. I think give her a quick shout out. I think she got like probably more than Brad on that, because it pumped up that much more this morning. So let me just see really quick. Yeah, Belle was in from 30 yesterday. She got out at 57.50 today on the GameStop trade. So give her a big round of applause as well there. Hey, there's a reason why Belle got out, right? Belle knows what she's doing, and maybe she could have jumped back in over time if there's a good entry. But when you're up that much, when a stock is up this much, eventually it's going to pull back pretty damn hard. So, honestly, GameStop, there's not as much to go over, because we went over this so much 1 week ago. We covered this whole move, the Fausto flag, the break above it, how 17 became support. We weren't necessarily expecting the whole, whatever the guy's name is, Roaring Kitty to, post on Twitter again, have this go nuts. But as far as the gap, at least, you can't use yesterday's data to make a decision today, right? Like, closed at 30.45. It opened today at 64.83. So you can't really use yesterday's levels to trade GameStop today. You could barely use today's levels to trade GameStop today, because, it kind of just pulled back. It's flat now. Let's see here really fast. This is today. This is today's book map data. Let me ask our students, Laureen, Brad, Wayne, Grant, Leonard. I'm going to answer some questions in chat in just a bit. Probably a little mishmash right now in chat. But let me ask our students here, where do we have resistance early in the morning on GameStop today? And a question from Leonard as I answer him quick. Can we make this decision of candles only or book viewer? Focus on book viewer first, but when it comes to a chart level, if there's a consistency of highs or lows on the daily or weekly chart that are holding well, it's not perfect, but if it's holding fairly well, consistency matters. Hey, if an easy looking level on the chart would be something I would definitely want to follow, in lieu of level 4 as well, though, and level 3. So where do we got resistance, folks? Resistance. And I like how a lot of us are answering 45 correctly too. So I was kind of making it even more simple and just having to say 50, but I love the students that wrote 45 as well. Yeah, nice long orange line it was out there for. It broke above it after a few attempts. Big ones at 50, 28,000. It's been there the whole morning there. Okay, so it breaks above 50, probably around the same time that AMC broke above, what is it, $10? Made that move too. So 50 potentially could be support on a pullback. Obviously, ripped the roof off the place and ran up towards as high as, what was it, 80? Yeah, where we had a new 101,000 shares joining the ask. Pretty cool that these levels are popping up, loosely speaking, every $5 45, 50, 55, 60, not as much as 65. There doesn't need to be, but 70, you'll see pop up. You'll see 80 overtime pop up. So generally, these $5 incremental levels are pretty good to work off of. Those are assumed levels to work here. But then at that point, if there is an orange line actually at one of these prices, that's where you would want to have your focal point. So 50, 60, a little 70 there, but more 80 here up top after, right? So those would be your real levels to start with. Now, otherwise, though, when we look at the heat map, when we look at the other column, not the heat map, this column here is CVP, notice that you do have a nice spike of volume. This is a pretty notable spike, pretty sharp spike compared to all the other prices nearby it, at least. Now, that's from consolidation. That's from just a shaking around here in this 30, 15-minute sequence. What price is that? Yeah, like kind of an approximate. Like 48.05, I think that says there, 48.05. So on top of 50 or right below 50, I should say to be perfect, 48.05 should be a nice complementary level to the $50 price today. Now, that's all from pre-market, right? That's all from pre-market. I didn't have any lines on this chart here before the open. It's not perfect either. This stock's on a 25-cent spread. You can't expect perfection with any stock, let alone with something that has that wide of an order book. But I think that you see what I see. I think this is as good of a hold as we can get. It chips under and over it a few times, but it does just that. It goes under and over. So this does pretty much everything you'd want it to do. Maybe on a 5-minute chart, you could see that it actually closes above this line, actually on every bar here. So it's good confirmation that at least support's trying to hold. But that's the only move that you had on this trade the whole day. That's the only move that you had on this stock the whole day today. It dropped off, unless if you were shorting it. Fausto had a great call out earlier today. He wasn't able to short GameStop because his broker didn't have the shares for him. Mine, TradeStation, no one broker is going to give shares to this thing unless if it's like an offshore broker and somewhere else, not domestically, right? So that's where otherwise you can't short it. The only opportunity is to look for a bounce. And truth be told, I'll tell you, we had a damn good level here. Look at that. 48.05 in combination with 50. But, really here, went under and over, moved up like 6 points. Not a bad move for a $45, $50 stock to make a 6-point push like that, right? So really quick, I want to get through some emails first, and then otherwise just some chats coming up after. Really quick, first from Luis in the main chat, then we'll go to emails. Why not buy a put if you can get the stock? So that's where I'd say as far as counter trends. The trend is your friend, right? I don't think it's really as wise of an idea to go counter trend on many trades to begin with, let alone something that is as volatile as this. Let's say for a trader just in general that is not consistently profitable, right? So inconsistency means, let's just say 50-50, some days you win, some days you lose. That doesn't give you too much confidence, right? Okay. Let's think of this like in relation to, I tried coming up with a good one earlier. If Fausto's listening, he might be laughing coming up. It's like kind of like swimming, right? It's kind of like swimming. Let's take someone that doesn't really know how to swim that well. Maybe like a little like doggy paddle here and there, whatever they call it. But that's it. Are you going to drop them into like a 15-foot deep pool and let them swim? Expect them to just start backstroking perfectly? No. Would you put that, person that doesn't know how to swim on a big diving board? No. Doesn't make sense. And not just for their own health, but you want that person to gain the confidence to at least use strategy accordingly. So there's easier trades that you could look to apply intelligible strategy towards. AMC was an easier trade compared to GameStop. Plug, not to say it was easy, but it was a little more manageable compared to GameStop. So that's where, as a trader, let's just say in general, if you're someone that's not finding your stride, if you're not consistent, if you, are taking losses, if you don't feel good about your trading on a daily basis, in general, I think there's better stocks to trade than GameStop, let alone going counter trend. You know what I mean? Think of it this way. When a stock is down 85, 90%, we'll look for that dead cat bounce, but that's because it could only go so much lower. Do you know how much higher GameStop can go if you're wrong? Really? Like, do you know that answer? Because there's no limits, right? We didn't know that GameStop would pump up to God knows what price back in 2021. It's kind of like thinking of shorting Bitcoin right now. I would never wish that on my worst enemy. Trend's too strong going up right now. And it has been. So that's where, just in general, we focus here at CTU on following the trend. So as far as going counter trend, it's probably something I'd say for more of like a category 4 or 5 trader that, hey, if that is their strength, if that is literally their number one strategy, if that's their strength and they are making $500 to $1,000 a day or more here at CTU, then I'm rooting them on. That's their bread and butter. That's perfect for them. Won't be perfect for Josh here, but if that's perfect for that trader, then I will root them on and I will encourage them to take the trades that make them money more often than not. But if that's not you, let's, and I say that to everyone here. That's not specific. That is literally a blanket statement to every trader here, and especially my new traders here, especially traders here that even if you're not new, if you're not happy with your results on a consistent level, then that's where I'd say it's best to follow the trend first. It's best to follow stocks that have tight order books, right? Tight spreads, filled in order books, I should rather say. All right. All right. Email time. Let's get to some emails here and then we'll finish up over time here. But let's go through. All right. So this could tie in with GameStop. It could tie in with AMC and all these others. I want to go over NVAX too. NVAX, we have Plug, we have SPWR. There's so many more trades that we can just go through. Had a question from Laureen and can basically cover them all. Can we talk about, quote unquote, where to get out of a stock? Exit strategies on Traders Talk today. I know myself and others either leave a lot of money on the table or hold on too long and turn a winning trade into a losing trade. Absolutely. So this is just Josh, the instructor, speaking. I always start off by saying, I'm going to probably give like 5 or 10 minutes on this and we'll get through as much as we can. I have a full class in the phase 2 stock course. It's called Setting Stops and Taking Profits. I always recommend for traders to go into that exact class. I did that back in April and back in January. The April and January classes, I taught that in phase 2. Now, aside from that one class, pretty much spread throughout phase 2 and then absolutely in phase 3, the live trading class, that's where Fausto and I are really showing that all around. So I just wanted to reference that first, thing, Setting Stops and Taking Profits class, and then really all spread throughout the phase 2 curriculum in full. Now, let's go over SPWR, I reckon, just because it's more on my mind. It's from today. It's not from yesterday. Actually, this is a good one to go over because it's not from yesterday. I reckon it moved a little, but we weren't focused on it yesterday. It made a hell of a pop, though, before 8 o'clock. Spreads relatively tight here. I just want to open up a couple pennies, but it's a fairly tight spread, very liquid order book. It's what it looked like here in pre-market. So it's a good stock to start with, right? Now at 8 o'clock, this thing pops, makes a huge, at 8:30, mind you, at 8:30, this thing makes a hell of a pop. So right away, I'm in the trading room. I log in at 8:30 is me. And like my first comment is like, oh shoot, this thing is making a hell of a pop, the 8:30 move, right? So my question is, where do we find a good entry? And then to answer Laureen, where do we find a good exit? How could we, have a good game plan on this, basically? How could we at least establish a good game plan on this trade? All right. So Really quick, I want to ask our students this, more my gold students at least here. Any of my gold students, if you have phases 1, 2, and 3 all together. So, I say that because I teach it more in those classes. So Susie, Ray, all of our students that are gold, platinum, diamond, definitely answer this for me if you can. At what price, around what price on this entire window, notice how I phrased that. At what price on this entire window do you see more buying than any other price? More buying than any other price on this whole window? What price has the most amount of buying? That could be taken in two separate contexts, perhaps. So might I say, for anyone answering $4, Rod, Laureen, Glenn, Rob, a lot of us answering 4. I completely understand why, and it's correct. It is correct in the sense that there is a 12,100 share buy order out there at $4. So absolutely correct. Head on. That is not incorrect. That is absolutely factual. Now, is there a price that is showing a lot of buying pressure, a lot of volume that's already been traded today that shows good buying? Wayne says based on CVP, the column CVP, like we said earlier on the other example. Well, look at this. CVP, Wayne is absolutely head on. There is a ton of volume at 450, but there's also a lot of volume, Wayne, at 433 right here, right? Now, this is a larger spike, I guess, right? It's pretty prominent, and it is the largest, but not that much larger than this. Is there anything else that sticks out there? Is there anything else that sticks out on this window, this whole window? Any other columns that you might want to consider using? Any other columns that you might want to consider using? Maybe not CVP. Alex says Delta. And Wayne was right. Wayne was right, but I was leaning him towards this area here. And you could even round up towards this and say, wow, okay, what is this spike here? Because this is definitely your largest green spike on this Delta column. This shows the difference between the buying and the selling. So we'll kind of say that price is at $4.57, $4.57. And that complements the 450 that Wayne correctly said from the CVP column right here. So 450 to 457, right? I think that's what we were kind of saying. So at that point, let's see. I don't have the call out in the chat. I was going to show the call out. I guess I didn't call it out in text as much. I took the entry though. So let's pop right there, 540. So ended up leading to a huge breakout shortly after 8:30 in the morning. It was over that level. It ran up pretty nicely. So I had to figure, okay, where's my next resistance? It popped above 450, 457. It flew up pretty nicely. Let me get you where I had 540. So let's see. Just want to show this here in full. So it was at 836 on the drawback. There's a lot of volume here at 560. Okay, this had to have been more from the daily chart, weekly chart here for my entry. I just wanted to show this. I thought it was going to come from Bookmap. So let's see. This had to have been more from the daily, weekly chart then, as far as my entry for getting in at 540-ish right there, right? Yeah, there we go. That was my reason for entry. I was a little sloppy there showing the Bookmap at first on you, but otherwise my reason for entry was not dictated off of Bookmap more than it was more based off of testing this as a pretty good historical level. So to go back to like Leonard's question, at least in chat, as far as like, candles versus book viewer, I think he was asking, you want to focus on level 3 and level 4 the most priority wise. But otherwise, look at these like candles and the tops of these. It's not flawless where every single candle is touching exactly $5.33. This one broke above it. This one held just under it here, right under it here. But it's pretty consistent. It's very consistent. So that was my reasoning for entry at that point on the SPWR by the time it kept popping and popping and popping. I was like, okay, well, if it can at least get above 533 and hold above that, there's a case to see a good move up. There wasn't much volume out there on the sell side. So from there, I took the entry. Now, the question is, to answer Laureen at least and everyone else, well, how do you feel confident with a game plan, right? Because there's no perfect answer that I can give, or literally there's no perfect answer that anyone can give that addresses this on an every trade basis. I have thoughts and I have a plan in my head that is developed based off of experience and what happens much more often than not. But that game plan is not based off of what happens 100% of the time versus what happens 0% of the time, right? So, we will be wrong in terms of like not being perfect. So at least after I got in from 540, when a stock breaks through a big level, we're looking for a big move shortly after. So if I can get out at $6, I feel pretty gratified here because, 60-cent trade, on a cheap stock like that, that's more than 10%. Now, where I held on to this was the fact that this was pushing up really well, but this is also coming off the GameStop and coming off the AMC pump. I think those stocks were pumping at that exact point in time. So I did have a little, risk involved with saying, okay, I think that there's a good chance this pumps too, right? I got in off a good level, but the reason I held on is because I saw the others pump and I said, okay, well, this one didn't pump up nearly as much just yet. I don't think there's as many eyeballs on SPWR as there could be on GameStop and AMC. So there could be something to that. Now, of course, it kept going up and up. I'll get you the exit here on this trade over time. 693. That was it right there. So that will come into play where I say, okay, how often am I up X amount of dollars on a $5 trade like this? How often am I up this much in pre-market, let alone? If the answer is not often, well, then I think the answer is pretty certain for you to pull the trigger and just get out. Again, we don't need to be perfect with the exit as long as we're pristine with the entry. So, I'm not up that often, $2 or nearly $2 or whatever it is on, a $5 trade. What was it, $1.60 or so? Maybe I'm up $1.60 on a $20 stock. Maybe I'm up $1.60 on AMD. It's not that I'm often that I'm up that much money per share on a $5 stock. That's where Fausto earlier today, like, oh my God, Fausto hit a home run today on plug, and it was in pre-market, but it was because, well, it was running up really well, but it's a cheap stock. Like, how often are you up $1 on a $3 or $4 stock? So I think he made a comment that he had chased it. And maybe on the entry at first, you could feel that way. But when you're up as much as you are after a point in time, man, that chase was nothing compared to the profit potential it gave you, right? So the more that you're up on the trade and you're not normally up that much on a cheaper stock, let alone on a cheaper stock in the pre-market hours, you are more trigger happy to just press the sell button. Look at this, trying to get back above my level. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I focused on whole number levels at this point, so I wasn't trying to say, okay, it's going to keep going up, right? No, my next whole number resistance was 7. So, if it could flip 7 into support, that's one thing. If it can't do that, then I'm out. So it ended up doing just that. I got out at like 693 here after it kind of popped and dropped. But to kind of answer that more generally speaking, well, that's where we'll focus more on general rules, right? For example, really quick, this is something I expect everyone to answer. If you're just a phase 1 student right now, just testing our classes out, I want you to answer this right away. What time do we normally expect reversals out there in the market? What time do we normally expect reversals out there in the morning within the stock market? 10:30, right? All of us answering 10:30. We should know at this point, it's not always exactly 10:30 on the gun. Sometimes it's before that. Sometimes it's a little after that. Hey, if you're up a decent amount on a trade, even if you're up like, 30 cents and, you're up 30 cents on some positions, it's not a rarity that you're up 30 cents on a trade. Okay, well, if you're up 30 cents and like it's getting to be 10:15, 10:30, well, it's not just sell, but it's saying, okay, where is there resistance? Is there a resistance ahead that is very strong to where it may not break above that price. Did the stock just break above a resistance level that needs to be support now? What if that stock can't hold support, right? Well, if it's around that 10, 15, 10, 30 time frame, it's more prone for that drawback, more prone for that reversal. So, I think one of us wrote here in chat, 4:30 Hawaiian time, I believe, Kevin S. Kevin, you located in Hawaii? You have a few traders here at C2 that are from Hawaii over the years. Kevin says, yes, very nice, Kevin. Where from? What part of Hawaii? Aloha. So, with that, geez, I commend anyone waking up on West Coast hours, Pacific time, let alone Hawaii. Yeah, for anyone cooperating with East Coast hours here, I commend you. So Kevin says Honolulu. Very nice there, Kevin. All right, let's keep going through some emails. Got a couple more minutes, folks. Then we're going to finish up. To get some emails that do come in at times, basically saying, thanks for reaching out. I'd like to understand more on the entry point of the trade. If you touch upon, so we definitely hammered that home here in this workshop. I always get to the questions near at the end. So, sometimes I'll read an email. And it's like, well, we hammered that home for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes here. So, from Locksmith, a great question from him that came in earlier. It's just to say, hey, we covered that all throughout this just before on the SPWR, on the AMC, and the GameStop. So I can't stress enough. Every trade begins with the entry. So if you think that you lost big on a trade because, you got greedy, because you didn't set your stop, odds are you're probably right with that. If you reviewed your own trade and, you went back and you saw what you saw, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm just going to tell you that every trade begins with the entry. So where did you get in and what time and what price? Because that dictates everything afterwards. That dictates everything, right? So if I just jump into a trade to just jump in, well, I expose myself at taking a pretty big loss before the stock even has a threat of dropping. So you want to remain as close to your big level, quote unquote, as possible. So I really don't like entering further away from where my big level is, from where the big volume is being traded at otherwise. That's where even just before on GameStop, I was like, wow, look at that 48.05 level, how that became a good support, a little chippy at first, but I would not want to take this trade at like 49 or 48.70. You got to be as close to this level because with how volatile it is, as much as we want to be on the right track and for this to actually bounce, well, once the foot's taken off the gas pedal, we got to ask, well, what happens if we're wrong with that thought, right? So really quick, we keep it going, folks. A couple more that came in, actually. So from Ramesh, using active trader screen on Think or Swim to place his buy limit orders, but he ends up chasing the stock on its way up. Should I be placing buy stop orders slightly above the current trading price? Thank you. Not a bad thought at all. Very good thought, in fact, but that doesn't mean you should do it on every trade. And there's a criteria basically I have with using buy stops. Really, if I have a clear resistance and the stock is not making a hurried move up there, if I have time to set the order up, then I'll do it, right? Because it's a good idea. It's a very good idea if you have the time to set it up. But if the stock is like popping in your face, it's running right now, like to me, it takes an extra couple of steps to set up. So I typically look to just focus on using limit orders otherwise. But what I'm more focused on than anything, Ramesh, again, we just said it before. So it's a matter of knowing where your big levels are. If you don't have a clear level iceberg out there, a very clean looking top or bottom on the chart, I'm not going to be as inclined to trade it. I was working with a student earlier on coaching just earlier today, and they were going over their thought process on this trade, and I just kind of asked them like, hey, why were you looking at this one price? Just to pick their brain. I'm just asking to ask, and they gave their reasoning, and it was fair reasoning, but it's more so to say that we need to focus on where the even larger levels are if we're going to take cleaner trades. How do I say? Sometimes we need to zoom out and get a bigger perspective of where the iceberg levels are. So, for the trader I was working with on coaching, maybe they were focused too zoomed in. They had their heat map zoomed in too much. They probably weren't focused on like the big levels. But otherwise, though, if you tend to focus on like the heat map or on your chart from Active Trader Pro, just the regular chart that is, if there is a very clean looking level and you have the time to see it, like even earlier today, this at 12, pretty easy to see level here, right? Well, at least you have the time to set up a potential order. So actually really quick, go back to Rivian for a second. Fausto was looking for a short there, and it was a great idea. Because I'd say the first test of key resistance, probably going to be a false breakout, probably going to be either a head fake or it just holds under it perfectly. So this wasn't even 1030, it was maybe a little bit before it, but the first test of resistance, I typically wait this out. I sit this out here, and then if it can keep nipping that level over time, then there's a case for a clear move. Even here, if you try jumping in as it breaks over 12, again, well, in hindsight, clearly it wasn't the right move. When a stock breaks through a big level, we should be getting a pretty big move shortly after. So let's say if you were to jump in this trade right here on the next test of 12 at least, so the level, pop and drop, goes for it again. If you took that trade right there, I'd be like, all right, fair, understandable. I got you. That's a good entry. It really is. When a stock breaks through a big level, we should be getting a big move shortly after, no? So this better be off and running. It better be, high stepping it up towards 1250, 1225. So obviously on the next candle, or even within the same candle, it kind of pops and drops it right away. That's not a good sign. Like, you saw AMC yesterday, you saw Novavax yesterday, and even right now, this thing's actually pushing. We're actually going to finish up Traders Talk coming up because Josh might have to take a trade here soon. But basically to say, when a stock breaks through a big level, what type of reaction you should be getting. So going back to like Rivian, this actually could have been a good example to even use a buy stop order and jump in once it breaks over 12. But it's to say, if this is not running the way that you're expecting it to, it better be at least holding over this level, because once it breaks under it, that's just bad news. Really quick from Leonard here, and then we're going to finish up because I saw this earlier and I just want to show it. Just easy. So Leonard was asking about the heat map earlier on GameStop, asking like, basically explain what we're seeing on this. I'd mentioned this before on AMC, I think, where all of these gaps in the orange lines, that simply represents just the amount of times it got halted on the heat map. It's just a weird view of it. So it looks funky, it looks odd looking, but basically wherever there's gaps in between the orange lines, it means that trading got suspended, it got halted for the time being. So that's another reason why we don't like following stocks that have a lot of halts on them, because it just makes it a lot more difficult to read. And if it's difficult to read, then I don't have much business with it, do I? Right? We should not as traders. So, folks, I have a few more questions that we got to get through, but it's just going to be through private chat. I have a few students that sent over private chats like earlier this morning. I'm going to get back to all of them. And everyone else otherwise, if you have follow-up questions, just shoot me over a quick private chat here. But already 5-6 minutes out. Got to jump onto a call coming up here with one of our traders. Hope you enjoyed. If you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works. At Cyber Trading U, should be popping up, coming up here in just a moment. Still got a couple mangled fingers for the meantime, so should have had that up just before. If you're new to our streams, if you're new to any of our social media platforms alike, at Cyber Trading U, popping up lower left, popping up top left is a QR code. Just scan that with your phone, scan that with your camera, with your phone, get your week-long access to our live trading room. See all of our students and traders there right now. You got Leonard, Margaret, Dave, Lawrence, Luis, Glenn, Leda, Kevin, Brad, Laureen, Susie, Wayne, and all of us otherwise. I appreciate you folks sticking with us here. We do this workshop each and every Tuesday morning at 11 o'clock Eastern time, but we'll be back later on this afternoon, just at 2:30 p.m. Eastern for the afternoon meeting. I'll catch up with everybody then. Take care.